Lyra woke up to the smell of something baking.
Is that cinnamon? Bonbon must be making breakfast.
She pulled herself up and rubbed her eyes. Then she stared at her hands. That's right, she was a human now. The sun was streaming in through the window, and she could see a carriage moving past on its own through the streets of France. After taking a moment to readjust, Lyra stuck her legs over the side of the bed and stood up, steadying herself against the bed with one arm. She stretched to get rid of the stiffness. There were voices coming from downstairs, and not one she recognized. The words were hard to make out, but it didn't sound like any of the humans she was staying with. She scratched her head and headed downstairs into the kitchen. Audrey was sitting at the table, staring at a silver box on the kitchen counter. Her hair wasn't tied back like it had been yesterday and hung down to her shoulders. She was also wearing glasses, even though she apparently hadn't needed them before. She turned her head when she heard Lyra enter.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We're back with our continued coverage of the presidential campaign.
It was like it was talking to nobody in particular. Audrey was hardly paying attention to it now. She picked up a long black object and the box suddenly went silent.
Mom and Dad left for work already. You slept in pretty late. I was almost about to go wake you up.
Yeah, I tend to sleep late.
Great hair, by the way. Even crazier than usual. I could lend you a brush if you need one. After you eat, if you want.
You made breakfast?
Yeah, cinnamon rolls. That's fine with you, right? I still feel awful about yesterday.
No, it's fine. Great, actually. My roommate used to make these all the time. She's a professional baker.
I'm definitely not. They're just Pillsbury. Pre-packaged. All I did was turn the oven on and put them in.
Lyra was just glad to see some recognizable food. She headed over to the stove where there was a pan waiting on top. A plate and some silverware was sitting to the side.
I made coffee too, if you'd like some.
No thanks. I don't really like it. Too bitter.
Even when everything else seemed so unfamiliar, there could still be something recognizable in the human world. Plenty of ponies liked coffee. Pony Joe made most of his money off of that back in Canterlot. Lyra had given it a chance a few years back. Even when she had tried to dump in as much sugar as possible, she had never really gotten used to the flavor. She took a seat across the table from her human friend. That still seemed too good to be true. Not too long ago, Lyra would never have imagined sitting down to eat breakfast with a real human. Lyra took a bite, and even though the cinnamon rolls weren't quite as good as what Bonbon made, she still liked them. The silver box was behind her. She turned to get a better look, and, as impossible as it was, there were human figures inside, through the window. There were words all around the figures, too many to focus on, all moving around. The human's lips moved, but no sound was coming out from anywhere.
Ugh, it's been nothing but election coverage. I'm already getting tired of it. I guess I should probably pay more attention to it. I mean, we'll both be voting in another year. I assume you will be at least. Are you a Democrat or Republican?
I don't know.
Undecided? I guess it's no big deal. So, anyways, your roommate.
Huh? What about her?
She was a professional baker, you said.
More of a confectioner. Candies and sweets and stuff. I love that kind of food, so it worked out well.
How old was she?
A few months older than me.
That's still pretty young to be a professional.
Not really. She worked for years before she even got hired where she is now, but, what do your parents do?
Dad works for principal in 801 Grand. That's the tall building in the middle of town. And Mom's a teacher, middle school English. She's still got summer classes going on.
So a teacher and, I'm not really sure what to make of the other one. So, what's English? You mean like England?
It was one of the human nations she recognized from her books. She was still unfamiliar with how human society worked with all these different countries. They couldn't possibly have teachers for all the other ones too.
You know, English. Literature, writing, language arts. Lyra, what you told me yesterday really worries me. I think you were probably taken out of school too early. What exactly happened?
That's when everybody graduated.
Okay. So, what school did you go to?
It's, what do I say? Audrey laughed at the idea of magic when I brought it up yesterday. The Canterlot Magic Academy had been a good school, but clearly human education worked differently. Oh, school.
Fine.
I really just want to see more of this place. I walked around a little yesterday, but there's even more out there. I don't really want to think about home right now.
Lyra, when I talked to my parents yesterday, they said the same thing I'd been thinking. You need professional help.
You're doing just fine. You're doing plenty just by letting me stay here. I really appreciate it.
Well, yes, but I mean therapy.
Bonbon had said that a few times too, but why would Audrey be saying that? Her very existence proves that I'm not crazy. What do you mean?
Obviously you can't afford it in your current situation, and we can't really spend that much either, but at the very least it would help both of us if you told me more about where you came here from.
I told you it doesn't...
It does matter, Lyra. Why would you leave your parents' house when you were so young, for one thing? What did they do?
Nothing. They just decided it was time that I knew the truth about myself. My parents always did the best they could for me. Audrey says she's the same age as me, and yet she still lives with her parents. They were going to work, but she still had a few years of school left. I'm not sure I can even consider myself an adult anymore, but that seems ridiculous. I've been taking care of myself for years.
I know you don't want to talk about it, but is any of this even true? What you've been saying hasn't made any sense.
Of course it's true. I get that your world, this place works differently than where I'm from, but this is all normal where I used to live.
I just find it hard to believe that you'd get up and leave everything and everyone behind like that.
My life back home was completely fine, I guess. I just always felt like I didn't belong there. When I found out about my real family, that explained why. I just need to know who I'm supposed to be.
I'd like to help you find your parents, but I just don't see how we'll get anywhere with just a photo, much less one that's as old as I am. Have you considered going back home? It sounds like you had plenty of friends there.
That just isn't possible anymore.
Why not?
It's hard to explain. Trust me, I really am telling you the truth.
I'm sorry if I'm coming off as intrusive, but as long as you're staying with us, we just want to know a little bit more about where you're coming from. Anyways, what's your plan for today? Let's just take it one day at a time.
I thought I'd go out and play some more. I still need to make more money.
Oh, that's right. Did you get a permit? I did some research online earlier. The city's pretty good about street musicians, but you do need a permit.
No, I never thought about that. I used to play in public all the time. I've never had problems with that before.
Well, you're lucky nobody called you out on it. You should probably get one today before you try anymore. It's just $5. Oh, and take your ID.
Huh?
Which reminds me, you never told me your last name. You could at least do that, right?
Last name?
Yeah.
That's a problem. I don't really know what it is. I still don't know anything about my parents.
But you must have gone by something back where you're from. What about your adopted family?
No, I've always just been Lyra. Well, actually Heartstrings, but if Twilight sounded like a weird name to a human, what would they think of that one?
So, no last name and no ID.
Nope.
Getting fined for playing would definitely be counterproductive. I really don't know what I've gotten myself into.
Sorry. I told you. Things were really different where I grew up.
I can tell that. Oh, the weather's on.
She pointed it at the box and the human's voice could be heard again.
Now then, we should be seeing some cloud cover and a slight chance of rain in the afternoon.
They said earlier it might rain around 3 or 4. If you're still going back out for anything, you should try to be in by then.
Yeah, my mom used to work in weather.
Oh, really? Like an anchor or...
Production. I didn't say anything about boats.
But I don't suppose you'll tell me the name of the station.
It really doesn't matter.
I guess it's a start. If you want to tell me anything else, you can trust me. You know that, right?
Yeah, of course. Wait, actually, one question.
Shoot.
Is there somewhere where I could buy some more clothes? I didn't pack much with me when I left.
Yeah, there's a few thrift stores downtown. It's not that far of a walk if you wanted to head out later today.
I think I will.
They cleaned up the breakfast dishes together and Lyra headed upstairs to get ready. Lyra stood in the bathroom in front of the mirror with a green-haired human staring back at her. She was almost surprised when she saw her reflection move at the same time as her as she picked up the hairbrush. She still couldn't believe that was her. The handle fit into her palm perfectly. It was almost exactly like the kind she would use on her mane when she was still a pony. But now she was using it the right way.
Moments like these bring everything into perspective. Even something as simple as a hairbrush had been designed by humans. This world's past was probably a lot like the other, if you go back a few centuries, but how far exactly?
She ran the brush through her hair, trying to brush out her bed head as much as possible. It still stuck up a little on top, but that didn't matter. With one look back at her reflection, she decided it was good enough. She took another moment to admire her new self. She really did look startlingly similar to that picture she'd done a few months back. Part of her had always known that she was meant to be human. Lyra headed back into her room and stood in front of the window. The weather report had said it was scheduled to rain between 3 or 4, so she'd wait until that was over before heading out to the store. The clouds had already been moved out and the sky was gray. For now, she checked out the bookshelves in her room like she'd been planning to do the night before. There were so many books here that she hardly knew where to start. This was, quite literally, a whole entire world of information that she was just beginning to tap into. There was a series of books, big hardcovers that increased in thickness, called Harry Potter. It looked like fiction, though. The titles reminded her too much of the daring-do adventures that she'd read as a filly. Actually, a lot of these books seemed like fiction. There was an entire shelf of books by some human named William Shakespeare that seemed to be plays when Lyra looked inside. Lyra would have really preferred a history of the human world, but here was something. Understanding human nature. That was perfect. She took it with her and sat on her bed, starting with the introduction. It seemed to be focused more on psychology than anything else, but that was good too. The preface said it was intended to improve relationships with our fellow human beings. Practical application was exactly what she wanted to understand. She read the first few chapters, but this wasn't what she had been expecting. All this stuff about consciousness and the psyche. It was too bad that Twilight wasn't here to explain what all these words meant. And it certainly didn't explain the human world very well. Lyra glanced up at the window. It wasn't raining yet. She wondered if she had the time wrong, but she was almost certain it should have started by now. It was still cloudy, but it was dry. She closed the book and set it down on the nightstand. It was getting late, so she should probably head out before long. Besides, she'd been reading about humans her whole life. What she really wanted was to go out and be a part of this place. Practical application, like the book said. The wad of human money was sitting there, so she picked it up and put it in her pocket. Eventually she'd run out. It was hard to tell if she'd even made a lot from her performance yesterday. And she needed a permit? This was getting too difficult. Heading downstairs, she found Audrey putting dishes back into the cupboards. She watched her for a while, the way she'd pick up a few plates with her hands, stack them, and move them up to the cupboard 4 or 5 at a time.
Can I help you?
No, I was just, I think I'm going to head out to the store now. Are you coming?
I've got a few chores to do. There are a few thrift stores downtown. Just head past the park I met you in, and it's a few blocks past the Capitol building. Trust me, you'll know that one when you see it.
I was right! This is the capital city. Maybe a more typical human city would be smaller, more like Ponyville or at least Manhattan. But of all places I could have started out my human life, it's so exciting to be here! I think I'll be able to find it. Thanks!
Yeah. Be careful out there, alright?
I'll try to be back before too long.
Lyra headed for the front door and went back out into the human neighborhood. She took a moment to orient herself, trying to recall how they'd gotten here the day before. They'd come back from that restaurant. She shuddered as she remembered it. But the park would be down the street from that. She started down the sidewalk in that direction instead, enjoying the cool breeze. She passed a couple of humans walking a dog on a leash. It was a small black one, not quite up to her knee. It wagged its tail as it looked up at her. The human holding the leash gave her a nod and she smiled back at him. Even with this being a big neighborhood, there were rarely as many humans walking outside as there would be ponies in Ponyville. The park was easy enough to find a few minutes later, and then down the street, the building with the domed towers must be the Capitol. That made sense. It wasn't as tall as Canterlot Castle, but it was still a very impressive structure with a similar sense of majesty. Lyra wondered if they ever held parties there like the gala. Downtown would be where the buildings started to get closer together. There were more carriages driving past now, and more humans on the sidewalks. Lyra was almost getting used to seeing them. Almost. As Lyra headed into one of the shops, she took another glance upwards. They hadn't cleared the clouds away yet, even though the rain had been called off.
Why bother sending out a weather report if they weren't going to adhere to it?
She shook her head and walked inside. She checked the money that she had brought with her. Human currency was still hard to understand, but she was beginning to work her way through it. The paper ones were called dollars, and those seemed like they were actually worth more than the coins. There was literally no difference between the $5 and $1 bills, other than what was printed on them. Still, humans considered that normal. It was easy to get sidetracked when there were so many humans' clothes for sale. There were so many more casual outfits than there would be in Equestria. Maybe that was partly because she'd grown up in Canterlot, but it was also because humans wore clothes all the time. She'd noticed yesterday that the different colors and designs made up for the lack of variation in their own physical appearances. Lyra knew she had to stay focused on what she was actually going to purchase. She counted through the money that she had brought and tried to make sense of the price tags on the clothes. She could buy a few outfits, but that was going to blow through her remaining funds in a hurry. At least she didn't have to worry about paying for food or a place to stay. For as long as she was in town, at least. It wasn't until she checked out that she realized most of the shirts she'd picked out were green. She'd just chosen what she'd thought would look good on her. Maybe green was just her color. As she handed each item to the cashier, she took a look outside. There were droplets forming on the windows.
Rain? Excuse me. What time is it?
It's almost 5.
Seriously? The weather report said it was supposed to rain between 3 and 4 today. They were completely off schedule. My mother would have never allowed this. Not even Rainbow Dash would have slacked off that much.
Are you in a hurry or something? Be careful out there.
Lyra handed over the money for her clothes. As she had expected, she was nearly out. Before long, she'd have to earn some more. Somehow. The human handed her the bags with the clothes inside, and she took them. These strings on the top. Most ponies would have thought that those were to hold in your mouth. Maybe that's what they'd become to equestrians, but it made so much more sense to hold these in your hands. If you were lucky enough to have them, that was. Lyra was about to head outside, but she stopped. She decided that she didn't really feel like heading into the humans' poorly timed rainstorm right now. They'd probably cut it off after an hour or so, like it had been scheduled. Lyra wasn't sure how they did it, if humans couldn't fly, but they did plenty of other impossible things. They could probably reach the clouds if they really wanted to. She stood near the exit, watching the spray of water as carriages zoomed through the rain. Turning back to the store, she considered looking around some more. She obviously couldn't buy anything else, but human fashions and goods were interesting enough to look through a second time. There was a bulletin board with some flyers posted near the exit. Lyra read some of them over. Her eyes stopped on one in particular. A word had grabbed her attention. She read it over again, tore it off of the pins that it was hung up with. Maybe this was just the answer she needed. Once it had cleared up, Lyra hurried back to the house with a grin on her face. She couldn't remember the last time she'd been this excited. Well, maybe when she first got to Des Moines, but this was even better.
Audrey!
In here!
Lyra headed in to find the black box turned on. Just like the smaller one in the kitchen, the glass panel was now showing images of humans in different places. Audrey was sitting in the recliner in front of it.
Mom's home. We've been waiting for you to get back. Did you get caught in that rain?
Hey, take a look at this!
Huh? Lyra, you know you're supposed to just take one of these tabs at the bottom, not just steal the whole thing.
Those were just numbers. I wasn't really sure what they meant. Actually, I don't know what a lot of this means, but they need musicians, so that means me!
It's a phone number. What do you mean you didn't know what it meant?
We both know I need to make money, and I make a ton more if I do actual performances. Playing in public is really just a side thing.
Seeking musicians for a hard rock band. Lead guitar, drums, influences include GNR, Aerosmith, AC/DC, Deep Purple? Lyra, this is a rock band.
Huh? Oh, I mean, I've heard of it. It's not really popular back home, but I pretty much know what it's like.
Playing the lyre would be what? Classical? Folk? I don't know. Point is, there's really not a need for that in a band like this. Looks like they need a guitarist.
Guitars? I've heard of those before.
You've heard of them. Oh, sounds like you're all set then.
Yeah! I mean, I've heard they could be difficult to play, but I think I'm up for it.
No, I mean... I guess that it might be useful to learn. There's definitely more of a demand for that than a lyre.
If this is the kind of music that's popular with humans, then I want to learn it.
What?
I think I can do it. Music's my special talent.
Just when I thought I was starting to understand you.
Anyways, I'm gonna go drop these off upstairs.
Wait, we were just about to have dinner!
Lyra nearly tripped over the unexpectedly narrow stairs, but caught herself just in time and hurried back up. Lyra headed up to the guest room and left her shopping bags there. The flyer she left tucked in the pages of her journal. She paused for a moment when she saw her liar's case. Then she headed back downstairs to eat. Dinner that night was lasagna, which Lyra was assured was mostly cheese and tomato sauce, and contained absolutely no meat. Audrey's mother had made it. They said it was Italian, yet another reference to a human nation. Lyra hadn't realized how interconnected they all were. After they had finished and it had gone dark outside again, Lyra was back in her bedroom, taking another look through the books. She was in the middle of one when Audrey interrupted her.
Hey, Lyra? About that flyer earlier.
She was leaning against the door frame, holding out that little thing in one hand. She'd called it Nathan yesterday, if Lyra's memory was correct. Her wrist moved around in an idle motion.
Yeah?
Well, I don't know how joining that band will go, but if you really want to start playing guitar, it turns out I know someone who could help you with that.